Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm so happy to be here with you. I am really pumped to be sharing the 10 top habits of highly successful, deeply connected couples with you today. I'm going to be sharing the best from the couples therapy research and literature, as well as what I've learned over the years after sitting with and continuing to witness the unfolding of couples in my own practice. I'm a psychologist and a couples coach, working to be more conscious and intentional about their relationship and to cultivate connection. And so if any of you are able to join here live as we live stream this training, say hello so that I can see that you're here, and jump in, ask your questions. I'll try to get to them as I go through this material, but if there are any that I missed, just remind me and I'll get to them at the end. Okay, so I'm going to jump right in again. For those of you who may not know me yet, and for those who do, my name is Dr. Maayan Greenbaum. As I said, am super passionate about my mission, which is to support couples, especially couples with young children, to transform their relationship struggle, their relationship pain, into deep, soul-awakening, unshakable connection, so that they can feel loved, feel seen and heard and celebrated, and also give their children a great example of what a healthy relationship feels like and what it looks like, because that's really the best, in my opinion, it's the biggest gift we can offer our children, and it's the biggest way that we can impact the next generation. It all starts with relationships, right? They're such foundational parts of our lives, and they continue to be throughout our life. So if you've ever found yourself wondering, and I've been following lots of the discussion here around what distinguishes couples or moments even in the same relationship where we tend to get stuck in replaying old hurt and pain, from those couples or those moments maybe where you're better able to use that conflict as a catalyst to grow and to feel more in love than before, and to feel understood even when you thought you would never be understood in these ways. What are the things that make that difference for couples? So what I'm really excited about is that these are, although these have been topics of songs and poetry and paintings and writings throughout the centuries, we actually do know quite a bit about this. It's not a mystery. So I've distilled here the top 10 habits of couples who are able to more of the time get through conflict well, to feel stronger on the other side. And again, none of this is meant to be, judgmental. It's all here for you just to inspire you, to lift you up, to give you some strategies and tools, and also to help you recognize where you may already be doing some of these things and celebrate them and reinforce them in your relationship so that you can be more clear about how much that's contributing to your connection with your partner, and to help you identify some of the places or areas where you feel like you could improve. In your own way. There's no right way to go about this. Every one of you can bring your own style and your own language and your own personality into this. So there's no one size fits all here. There are no miracle solutions. But what this is about making moment by moment decisions over and over and over again, and committing and recommitting to moving towards each other rather than away, right? Because conflict really is totally inevitable in relationships, and the more we get close to our partner, the more likely we are to get triggered. So before I jump in and dive into these 10 habits, which I know you're all waiting to hear about, I do want to share a little bit about just how in our relationships, when we get really close to somebody, what ends up happening usually is, and this is mostly unconscious, is that two parts of ourselves, and I know this is a little oversimplified, but stay with me here, two parts of ourselves from our childhood get reactivated. So the first part that gets activated in a really close, deep relationship is the wounded child in us, right? Some of you may have heard of this in shadow work. There are many different terms to describe this, but the wounded child part of us, the part of us that is unhealed, that's vulnerable, that might be panicky, that may be just feeling very needy at times, scared, upset, in need of being soothed and reassured. That's one part that gets activated and triggered in close relationships, especially when we become more emotionally dependent on someone. The second piece of ourselves that gets activated in close relationships with our partner, with our life partner, or in any committed relationship really, is the adapted child. So what does that mean? That means the part of ourselves that has adapted in an attempt to protect ourselves from getting further hurt, from feeling uncared for, from feeling alone, from feeling like we don't matter. And those parts of ourselves have served us well because at times they may have softened the blow or the hurt in our families of origin. However, the downside is that those ways of adapting often also cut us off from new experiences, from trusting, from being able to take something in from another person, from being able to be soothed. Those parts of ourselves that have adapted, that adapted child, can sometimes feel kind of rigid or fixed in certain ways of doing things or going about things, and they can limit us. So just keep all of this in mind as you listen, and let me know what part of this resonates for you, what you feel is most useful. All right, so let's take a look here. So the top 10 habits, I've gone ahead and divided them into 2 categories. And don't get overwhelmed. You'll be able to see the replay, and I will be writing much more about this. Just see if you can find one thing that I talk about today here that you want to carry forward into your relationship, and know that that is good enough. Nothing needs to be transformed or changed in extreme big ways. What makes the biggest difference is recommitting to one thing at a time over and over and over again, okay? So the first 5 habits are habits that help partners to grow and nurture and cultivate their emotional bond. And many of you, I've already seen you giving each other recommendations for books about this and just talking about this from your own experience. Many of you are already very familiar with the attachment concept of having a secure base. And what we used to think about when we thought attachment is parents and children. But now we also know that our need to feel attached in a secure way continues with us, and it's lifelong. And so partners who know how to nurture their emotional bond continuously are couples who are generally more secure with each other and each other's presence. So those are the first 5 habits, and I'll go through them quickly. If any of you have any questions, I just want to make sure that this is still recording, because in the past I've had some trouble. So if you can hear me or see me, just give me a yes so that I know that it's recording and that I haven't lost everything that I've recorded so far. Okay, I think we're good. Let me know if you can hear me and if you can see me. Okay. So these first 5 habits are habits that help to create and nurture and cultivate that emotional bond. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica. Thanks for letting me know. Awesome. Irina, thank you. Okay. So the first habit of couples who know how to be deliberate about nurturing their bond is that they remain curious. They remain really, really curious about their partner's internal world or emotional life. They, not only when they're dating or when they're sort of in the beginning stages of their relationship, but they know how to continue to hold their partner compassionately in their own heart and to remain curious and open to learning about what brings their partner joy, what hurts their partner and why, what their partner's sensitivities might be, what their hot buttons might be and why, and not just knowing them, but really knowing them and being curious about with the intention of understanding and bringing compassion to your partner. That is very powerful in terms of building an emotional bond. And I can promise you that the more you practice this with your partner, whether or not they're conscious of it, they will feel more generous and more curious about you in turn as well. That's just how the world works. Relationships are systems. So even if one person makes some shifts, the other person will respond in time. Sometimes it's not right away, but it does usually happen that way. So be curious about your partner. Really know, like, what are their values? What are their dreams? What do they worry about when they can't fall asleep at night? What helps them get out of bed in the morning? What do they look forward to? What are some of their wounds from their families of origin? Because we all have them, just being by nature of being human. What's their style of being with their feelings? Are they someone who finds it easy to name and identify their feelings and to share that with you or anyone else for that matter? Or are they someone who might need a little bit more time or several attempts before they find just the right words to describe how they're feeling and why? So knowing those things can really, really, and not just knowing them, but being continuously curious about them goes a very long way. So that was number one. That's the first skill that connected couples just naturally tend to practice in their relationships. The second one is accepting influence from our partners. So couples and partners who are able to remain open to receive from their partner continue to build an emotional bond in that way as well. And if you think about it, it makes so much sense, right? When we're closed off to our partner, or when they sense that it doesn't matter, how much they explain themselves, that you'll remain sort of closed off to what they're saying or feeling, that usually does not help in terms of cultivating intimacy or closeness or trust or any of that. But the opposite is true. When you're able to, or your partner is able to rethink something in light of what you bring to the table, or in light of a strong feeling that you have, it's an amazing feeling to know that, we deeply impact each other. And we all do, but some people have more trouble sort of accepting that and letting on that their partners actually do influence them and that their opinions do matter to them. So accepting influence, being receptive and being open. And under this category, you can think of it as being flexible, considering your partner's perspective or feelings, and also responding to any gestures or bids for connection that they make. Okay. So let me know if this is all making sense and if it's useful so far. If you have any questions, just type them in. I'll be checking the comments as I go along. The third habit of highly connected couples, and this still is under that first category of cultivating a secure emotional bond with your partner, is being interdependent. And this is easier said than done. I think for most couples, there are times in their lives together where one partner or both may be struggling with either feeling too dependent or sort of too self-sufficient and not allowing themselves to receive from their partner, or to ask for help, or to struggle, or to even admit to themselves that something is really difficult for them and that they don't feel able to get through it, without help. So being interdependent, and not just as partners, but also as a couple, as a unit, allowing these couples allow themselves to be supported in a community, whether that community is made up of family or really, really close friends who feel like family. These couples really don't have the illusion that they need to be self-sufficient or that they need to meet all of their own needs or their partner's needs. Okay. The fourth one here, the fourth habit, is being deliberate about pursuing pleasure for the sake of pleasure. I'm going to say this again because in this culture, in this day, it is so tough, right? We really need to be so deliberate about this. But couples who can hold space for each other and for themselves as a couple to have fun, to play, to have fun, to be deliberate about making meaning together, about just having heart-to-heart conversations about what matters most to them outside their day-to-day. report, feeling so much more satisfied with their relationship. And the reason why is it's pretty straightforward. I mean, none of this is really rocket science, but it's not so easy to implement always. The reason why is because we all sort of search for that, right? We have our relationships are spiritual, they're physical, they're emotional. There's so many dimensions of them. And sometimes we forget to really cultivate and nourish all these different dimensions of our relationship, including our need to have a sense of purpose or of a shared purpose in our life with our partner. And so much of the time, that is at the forefront of our awareness when we first get together. But then, being human, we kind of take for granted our relationship, and we don't nurture it as much, or we have trouble holding a boundary around it. And that can begin to it can just begin to feel uninspired, or like something is missing. So check in with yourself and see if you and your partner consistently prioritize play and having conversations about what really matters to you. And the fifth and last habit in this category of building an emotional bond is, and this is connected to what I just said, but somewhat different, is setting up and creating and constantly sort of evolving your own sacred rituals for how you connect with your partner. And this can change over time. It doesn't have to feel stagnant or be the same, but the point is that you have ways of consistently connecting with each other, of putting your phones down or whatever other distractions you might be having, and really connecting with your partner. I find that many of the clients that I've worked with say, just like in childhood, right, that there are certain times of day that seem to matter more. Can any of you guess what those might be? Just kind of scanning the comments here. So yeah, some of you are thinking about this. So it can be when you first wake up in the mornings, how just the way you look at each other, and then again, how you launch each other out into the world. And doesn't it feel so different to leave to wherever you're going, to drop off your kids at daycare, or to work, or whatever you have going on in your day? Doesn't it feel different when you leave feeling like you have a solid connection with your partner? We know from the research, after the kids go to bed, Jessica, exactly. So those are such important times, and we need to feel like we have a secure base, we have a home to come back to, and that someone has our back and someone knows what we're up to in the world. It can change everything. It makes us more creative, actually impacts our immune system. We can recover more easily from setbacks, and these are the things that people later in life say, that really stay with them. It's just that overall sort of feeling as you go through your day of feeling supported and loved, and that there's someone waiting for you to return, and someone who's really supporting you. So those are all times to consider. And every single couple that I've worked with, including myself, has a different way of doing this, and different beautiful rituals that they have with their partner. So it almost doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something that you find nourishing, that you look forward to, and that can help take you out of just like the day-to-day stress of getting stuff done and sort of being in that frenzy mode. So those were the first 5. I'll give you a quick recap. The first one is being curious about your partner's inner world, what brings them joy, what they need in order to be comforted, how long it takes them to get over things when they're hurt, things like that. The second habit is accepting influence from your partner, being receptive to them having an impact on you, and not just being receptive to it, but letting them know that they have an impact on you, whether it's positive or negative. The third one was allowing yourselves to be interdependent on each other, and also to have a support system, to be in community. And this is one way of doing this, is being in MMR and being in this community. The fourth one is being deliberate about the pursuit of pleasure, making meaning together, having a vision together, having dreaming, just daydreaming out loud, making sure that you don't neglect those dimensions of your relationship. And the fifth one is creating sacred rituals for play, for sexual connection, for an erotic life together, and for expansion and growth. So those are the first 5. Before I move on, I'm just going to quickly take a look here and see if anyone here has any questions, or what this is bringing up for you. If any of you are already doing some of these things and you can celebrate that, please just let us know so we can celebrate that with you and acknowledge you. And if you're watching the replay, please comment as well. We will all be able to see your comments and keep the discussion going, right? Okay, so the second part of what I want to share today, the next 5 habits, have everything to do with how deeply connected couples navigate conflict. Because we know that 80%, which is like amazing, but 80% of couples' arguments are actually driven by unconscious forces or sort of old hurts, and they're inevitable. But what really matters most is how we treat our partners when we're hurting. That's what they remember. They remember all the good things too. But the way that we interact and sort of comfort ourselves when we're hurt, and then interact with our partner when we're hurt, can make such a huge difference, especially when it's a recurring thing, right? It wouldn't make a difference if it's just one argument, but if it's a pattern that's recurring, and this is where so many couples get stuck, and it is. I just want to validate real quick, and I know this is all by way of introduction here, but it's so important just to remember, we're going to get triggered, but every time we do, we have an opportunity, a new opportunity, to really be mindful, to check in with ourselves, and to be mindful about how we would like to feel afterwards, and to sort of check in with ourselves and see where we're coming from. Jessica is saying we seem to always have the same argument. I think, so many couples would agree with you. I've heard that so many times. And even in my own office, it's like the same argument comes up in different ways and all these different versions. And that's usually because of what I said before, that the arguments are never about whatever you're actually arguing about. I mean, that can be a piece of it. We are actually responding to our partner or something they did or said or didn't do, or the way they hurt us, for sure. Like, our partners contribute to the things we get angry about. However, do you think that we would be sort of feeling so intensely if we were just responding to that? No, right? So usually what happens is that hurt or that feeling reminds us and activates an older feeling from our childhood, that it could be even before we had words. And it can feel like we're in the same place that we were stuck in before. It can almost feel like, people have said to me, like, I just get scared that I'll be stuck in this indefinitely, or it's just more evidence that I'll never be heard. I'm always going to be alone and no one's ever going to get me. And doesn't it hurt even more when it's our partner? It's like the one person that we think is going to be different than the other people who've disappointed us. And so when we experience our partner as betraying us or hurting us in the same way that we were hurt as a child, it can be even more discouraging and lonely and outright like scary, because our hopes are so high that our partners can help us work through these feelings differently. And when that doesn't happen, or when it feels like it's not happening or it won't happen, we get really, really scared, and sometimes we lose hope. So I want you to know there is hope. Our partners can absolutely, or our relationships can absolutely sort of heighten those old painful experiences, but they can also be the perfect setup or place to work through those very things differently. And the beautiful thing is we get so many opportunities, right? It's not a one-shot deal. So whether we like it or not, we're going to have lots and lots of opportunities for that same argument, for those same hurts to come back up. And the way that we handle them when they do is what makes the difference. So I'm going to go ahead now and share those ways that can empower you so that you feel like you're not free falling. So I call these next 5 skills relational fluency, and I'll tell you, and it'll kind of become apparent when I go through them. So the first skill of highly connected couples when there's conflict is having a plan, right? And we have plans for so many other things that are so much more mundane, but most of us get into arguments just kind of like assuming that we'll figure it out as we go, which really is not a very supportive mindset to have or habit to have, because when we're in the throes of an argument or like in the middle of an adult meltdown, what I call them, our higher cortical functions, which help us focus, take in and process new information, come up with creative solutions, like that goes out the window. So we don't have access to all of those inner resources when we're in a fight. And it becomes even more important to have some kind of a plan or some sort of an idea that you can actually get through this ahead of time. And you may want to consider talking to your partner about this when you're feeling more connected, when you're feeling calmer, so that you can come up with some ideas and just kind of continuously tweak. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but just as long as you have some sense that you can get back to connection, that will make a huge difference in your next argument. And, try it and see and let us know how it goes. So these couples have a plan. And I can do an entire different training about this because there's so much here. But just to give you a few ideas, one of the things that many of the couples who've worked with me have done that is most effective is closing exits. That's a term from Harville Hendricks. And what that means is that couples agree ahead of time to be a container of safety even when the feelings run really, really high. So they'll agree not to sleep in a separate bed, not to storm out of the house without saying that they're coming back, not to threaten leaving a marriage or a relationship in the middle of an argument, not to withdraw for like days at a time in silence without speaking to each other, because being ignored like that when you're in pain already is it's so corrosive to a relationship and to trust. If any of you have any other ideas about what it would mean for you to close the exits in your relationship, you can post below and let us know how you do that, how you keep the safety in your relationship even when you argue. And I just want to say, like, arguing is not a bad thing. It can actually bring about a lot of insight and good. It just matters, like, what matters is how we argue and how we recover afterwards. Thank you for the thumbs up. Okay, so having a plan, knowing how much space each of you might need, how you'll come back together, just that you intend on talking again. And we know, and I won't say too much about this right now, but we also know from studies that the faster couples are able to repair conflict, the better they fare as well. And just one last piece here before I forget this. Other studies done by the Gottman Institute have shown that within the first 3 minutes of an argument, we can now predict what the outcome of that argument will be. So it's so important to be mindful of how, when you're calm, how you want to show up during these arguments and how you want to feel about them afterwards. Okay. So underneath having a plan also comes a whole section here that I can go into another time about having conscious conversations. Some of this involves doing your own internal work, knowing your own triggers, your own wounds, understanding your own templates and blueprints for relationships that we all have. We all carry forward from our families of origin and from our parents. Couples who are highly connected tend to have the ability to avoid reality battles, to avoid zero-sum win-lose battles. They know how to, instead of complaining, they know how to make requests of their partners. And they understand that there's always a hidden wish or a meaning behind what our partner is reacting to. Okay. And the more predictability and reliability we have in terms of how we get through conflict in our relationship, the calmer we'll be able to be the next time around, right? Because we're sort of building a reservoir of trust, and knowing that if we've gotten through feelings like this before and they didn't destroy our connection, we can get through this again, and maybe we don't get as scared or as terrified the next time around, which helps the whole thing from sort of devolving and escalating even further. And this just makes so much sense, right? Because the more, and this is a system, the more chaotic it becomes, the scarier. The more predictability we have in our rhythms, even in our rhythms of sort of arguments and conflict, the calmer we're able to be, or the easier it becomes to get back to calm. That was all number 1. That's the first skill in relational fluency, is having a plan. The second skill, and this will be a lot shorter, is couples who are highly connected prioritize their connection. So even when they're arguing, they know that the feeling that many of us have at times, that we are at the center of the universe, is an illusion, and they know how to surrender that. They remember that they're in relationship with another person who also has feelings, who also has a history, who's also getting triggered, and they are able to hold space for both people at the same time. They come from a 2-person model of relationship, not a 1-person model of relationship, and they bring a sense of mutuality to their connection with their partner. And what this does is it works with, instead of against, the unconscious purpose of their relationship, right? So if you just consider remembering that your partner is there, or if your partner is able to remember your feelings alongside their own, they don't cancel each other out, but you can coexist at the same time. Do you think it will elicit more or less sort of cooperation and openness from you? The latter, right? It's really kind of simple intellectually, and I know it's a lot more difficult to actually implement, but thinking about this right now in this moment when you're calm can serve as a way to remember and bring this with you the next time that you find yourself feeling reactive, and trying to remember that you want to be responsive instead. Let me just take a second to scan the comments here. Irina says, for us, when we're having an argument, I get flooded and my husband wants to continue to talk. So I don't exit the argument, but I also can't continue unless I take a break. Yes, thank you so much for bringing this up. Flooding is one of the most difficult things to manage for both partners. I don't know if you would agree with me, Irina, but it can be so hard to express ourselves in a way that our partner can take in when we're flooded, because we're kind of swimming in all these intense feelings ourselves, and sometimes we come at it with such intensity, and often, at least for me, I can say, there's anger in the mix as well, which our partners then pick up on, and it can be very, very difficult to manage. So it sounds like you that that you need to take a break, which is wonderful. And I know, because I've spoken to you, and I've seen your posts, I know that you are really compassionate about saying, to your partner, I need a break right now, but I am coming back, or something like that. Probably you can type in what you actually say, and if it's close to what I'm guessing. But that is what we want, right? Even if you need a break, that's totally fine. And you can even tell your partner, I need a break because you matter to me. I want to be able to be heard and to hear you. And right now, I'm just too reactive. I'm being bombarded by so many feelings, and this isn't serving either one of us right now. So let's take a break and come back. Tell me if this is helpful. For all of you who are watching right now, tell me if that's helpful, or if you have a different version of it that works for you. And you can continue to experiment it. It's all about experimenting and tweaking, and not judging yourself or being too harsh if it doesn't go the way that you want it to go. Just recommitting and doing a little bit more next time and seeing where it takes you. The third skill that couples who are highly connected have is they avoid coming at their partners with a judgmental attitude. They also know how to stand up for themselves and be assertive without abandoning themselves, but also without putting their partner down or being condescending. I just want to read what you said. I usually start crying and he doesn't know what to do with that. And that signals that we need to take a break. Yeah, I'm so glad that you are so insightful and aware that he's coming from a place of just not knowing how to comfort you. Although, it might also make you angry in the moment. I'm not sure that he doesn't know what to do when you cry. But I think that's something that with just the way that we're socialized differently as men and as women, that is something that can, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but that is something that can be difficult for some men to be with, is, our tears, because it can be so painful for our partners to see us in pain and not know how to comfort us. The men that I've worked with have said they don't let on in the moment, but so many of them just feel really, really helpless inside. And when we can remember that as women, that it's not because they're indifferent to our pain or that they don't care, they just honestly don't know how to be with us or how to, they feel inadequate in some way. Some of them have said this to me. That can make it so much, less painful to be with in those moments. Okay, so couples, just jumping back to number 3, couples who are highly connected during times of conflict avoid coming from a judgmental place. And they also avoid, so what I sometimes hear in my office is people saying, turning to their partner and saying, you are so, effing selfish, or whatever. It can take on so many different forms, but they basically are coming from a place of saying to their partner, you are this way. I know you, and this is how you are. And that really doesn't serve anyone. Couples who are connected more of the time usually know that will only throw more, what's the saying I'm looking for? It'll only sort of heat things up even more. It creates real animosity when people say that. So what they can say instead is, when you said this to me, it made me feel this way. It's a part of myself I struggle with or that I feel ashamed about. Just be vulnerable instead of attacking your partner. And it can be very difficult, especially when we're angry or when we feel we've been wronged. But just remember that it will actually help you more if you are able to not put your partner down when you're making requests of them. Okay, and number 4, moving along here, is the ability to remain grounded and to hold on to a more expansive perspective. So we hear so much, and it's so useful, all the mindfulness work about being in the moment. But this is actually one place, arguments, where it's helpful to be in the moment and hold on to a larger perspective. So what that means is knowing that this argument is temporary, that this moment of disharmony is just that, it's a moment. In most relationships, that's how it is. And couples do get back in some shape or form. Some are able to do it with more ease than others, but things do usually get better, even if you do nothing. And so just holding on to that perspective that this is temporary. Every relationship goes through phases and periods and moments of connection, disconnection, and then repair. And and every partner and every relationship has positive aspects, wonderful things, and difficulties. That's just an inescapable reality of relationships. And the more we can accept disappointment without getting stuck in resignation, the better we are at being able to come back to our partners and turn back towards them rather than getting stuck in fear and doubt and anger and resignation. And I just want to say that resignation and indifference, apathy is possibly, I'll say that it's the most corrosive toxic force in relationships, especially when it keeps happening. Partners who harbor contempt towards each other do so much damage to the relationship. It's very, very difficult to come back from it. It's not impossible, but it's very, very difficult. It really requires some intense work and forgiveness and healing, because it's just so damaging. So, and one of the most painful experiences as a human being that we can have is being in pain and feeling like the person that we want to look to for comfort is adding to that pain, or it doesn't matter to them, or it doesn't seem to faze them when we're in our darkest moments. So that's something that we definitely want to avoid, is indifference towards our partners. Sometimes it may look like indifference, but it's actually not, especially for partners who have a more avoidant attachment style. Again, it's like that helplessness that I talked about before. So if you're one of those people who feels very intensely but doesn't show it, maybe you want to consider letting your partner know that that's why you're not engaging. But other times it really does come from a place of sort of hopefulness hopelessness and giving up, which is a very, very damaging place to be in a relationship. So hold on to that perspective. That's number 4, a wider, larger perspective of positive and negative, good and bad moments in time, versus one of my clients calls it like having tunnel vision, in that moment where like the only reality is suffering and pain, and it feels like we're just going to get stuck indefinitely in that suffering, which is, it's a very, very scary, painful place to be. And number 5, just looking to see. Yes, Linda, thank you so much for your contribution. My husband quickly angers and retreats. Yeah, so knowing that about him can be helpful too, right? I'm wondering, Linda, does he come back around? Does he bring things back up once he's feeling more ready? You can let us know. Okay, so number 5, and this is the very last piece of content in this live stream today. Number 5 in relational fluency in the top 10 habits of highly connected couples, and the most important one, in my opinion, is taking a stand for each other's growth in your connection with each other. And I feel like this is a sacred role that each of us has in the life of our partner. We really have the power and the capacity to help our partner, and they do for us, to help our partner in exactly the ways that they were most hurt as children, and in exactly the ways that their own development may have been thwarted or stifled, and to help them bring back and get reacquainted and sort of reintegrate parts of themselves that they find so unlovable. And you can bet that they have that, because they're human. We all do. So when you take a stand for your partner's growth in your relationship, and you let them know how important they are to you, it doesn't matter how. You can read, I think there's been some discussion about the 5 love languages. There's so many different ways we can let our partners know how they are loved. But especially when they're in pain, or when we're arguing, if you can even kind of use humor or come up with a silly way ahead of time to let each other know, like, I still see you, even though we're arguing and this has really gotten out of hand here. I see you. I love you. I had one couple once actually bring, I don't know what those things are called in English, like those things and like TV and a movie set where it's like take 2, where you kind of like flip the thing and you start over. And they would say to each other, okay, stop. We did this. Let's start over. I love you. I don't want it to go this way. And that would really help them bring things back on track when they felt like they would get derailed. And it provided so much relief and humor, and like just another chance to take a deep breath, get grounded, and start over again. And we all have that opportunity. It only takes a split second to decide that you want to start over. And most partners, I think, will go along with you if you want that chance. So letting your partner know that how special they are to you, that they matter to you, and not being indifferent to their pain and suffering. Under this category also comes this also includes owning your impact on your partner and saying things like, I see that I hurt you. I see that you're in pain right now. I know that what I said, even if you still believe what you said to be true, just recognizing your impact on your partner, whether it's good or bad, and letting them know that you want to work it out with them, even though you may not know how. Just them knowing and you saying, I want this to work out. I don't know how it's going to happen, how long it's going to take, what it will require, but I want this to work out. I love you so much. This matters so much to me, and I feel so broken and so devastated right now. Being in this with you can make a really, really big difference. I love the Take Two idea. Yeah, thank you. It's not my idea. It was a couple that I was working with years ago, and they never fail to bring that thing with them, whatever it's called. Someone can help me out here. Someone who has a background in video production or something. But yeah, they would literally bring it with them. It doesn't have to be a prop, obviously, but it can really make a big difference. And what that also helps us feel right when we do these things is that you and your partner together are both prioritizing your relationship and your connection, which is really at the heart of everything that I've been saying here today. So let me know if you are having any feelings or thoughts or associations to anything that I shared today. What feels most useful and why? What are you going to change this week in your next argument? What do you want to do differently? And make it small. Make it really, really small and manageable. And know that if you're also a parent and you have children, this is huge. It's huge. Being able to say, I'm sorry. Being able to say, I see I hurt you. Or, mommy and daddy are arguing right now, but we're also, we're acknowledging how we're impacting each other. Not in these words, of course, but, children pick up on these things. Most of the time, kids only get to see arguments. They don't get to see how we repair and how we understand each other and get even closer afterwards. So this is so, so, so important. This is I feel like there's nothing more important than starting at home, starting with the foundation of our most important relationship, because the ripple effect is just ginormous. And so please, please, please continue to, just reflect upon this. Write down or jot or journal your takeaways and let us know how it goes in the group and in this thread afterwards. I think, this can be so, so, so powerful, and it can protect your relationship too. So even if things are going great, it can deepen your connection. It can protect you during the times where you're feeling less inspired or angry with your partner or disappointed with your partner. When you have lots of good feelings in the mix, it's easier to counteract the times where you're disappointed or feeling maybe even a little bit disillusioned or hopeless. If this is speaking to you, I wanted to share with you that as a gift to this community, I have decided to open up 3 more spots for the first 3 people who apply for my 20-minute Rekindle Your Relationship assessments. That's where I get to sit down with you over the phone or virtually and really review, take a look at these pillars of connected relationship and see where you're at, what you're doing well, what you'd like to shift, how I might be able to support you in that with your partner. And we can really personalize and help you implement some of what we're talking about today with my full attention on your specific relationship and where you're at. I just want to take a moment here, and I'll post that link at the end of this thread so you can find it. I think it's also pinned to, Avital pinned the assessment to the top of the group, so I'll just make sure that's still there as well. Jessica, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that this is coming at a good time for you. She says they argued all weekend, so the timing of this is uncanny. Yeah, I mean, it's always a good time to talk about this, right, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm so glad that you were able to show up, that you are making a commitment to yourself and to your relationship to make this a priority and to use. I really want to leave you, all of you, with a message that arguments they're going to happen. And the way we just make decisions moment by moment before arguments, during arguments, and afterwards is what makes the difference between couples who not only stay together, but who really thrive together. It's not just about surviving, right? It's not just about, there are moments where it can feel like we're just trying to get to the other side, but this really becomes cumulative. So the more you're able to be curious about your partner, to understand your impact on them, to repair things with them, to avoid being judgmental, it'll all come back to you, and it will just really help you build a solid foundation with your partner that will nourish you on every level, at the soul level, as well as give a huge gift to your children, who I'm sure, kids just find it so painful when their parents argue. And so for children to see that their parents also know how to repair things and that they are connected in spite of the difficulties is such a relief for the whole family. And they will carry that knowledge in their bodies and in their unconscious forward into their adult relationships when they're adults. So thank you for showing up here. I'm just going to see if there are any other questions before we part today. And please continue to the discussion in the comment section. And if you want to apply for a 20-minute Rekindle Your Relationship assessment with me, just follow the link and it'll be self-explanatory. I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Let me know what would be helpful for you. If there's any part of today's training that you want me to expand on, I'm happy to do another Facebook Live soon. Bye, everyone. Take care.